Ambassador Kethvar walked into the great meeting hall with heavy steps. His blue skin felt cold despite the warm air. For the first time in 847 years, the human seat was empty. The Galactic Assembly had met every month for almost 1,000 years. Every species sent someone to speak for their people. The tall, crystal beings from the hegemony sat in their special chairs. The small, quick traders buzzed around their floating platforms. Even the war-loving Korath had their big representative in the corner. But the human section was quiet and dark. Kethvar looked at the empty chair where Ambassador Sarah Chen used to sit. She always brought those strange human drinks and shared them with anyone who wanted to try. Last month, she had been telling jokes that made even the serious crystal beings laugh. Now, nothing. "Friends," Kethvar said, his voice carrying across the huge room. "We have a problem. The humans are gone." A low buzz filled the hall. The trader representative, a small being called Zix, spoke first. "Gone? You mean they are late?" "No," Kethvar said. "We cannot contact any human anywhere. Not on Earth. Not on their colonies. Not on their ships. They are all silent." The crystal representative, tall as a tree and bright as a star, made a sound like wind through caves. "This is most unusual. Humans are never quiet." That was true. Humans were known for being loud, messy, and always talking. They asked questions that seemed silly. They made jokes at serious meetings. They suggested ideas that sounded crazy but somehow worked. Now the galaxy felt too quiet without them. Dr. Yithara, the smart alien who studied different species, stood up. She had 6 arms and eyes like black pools. "I sent teams to check human worlds," she said. "What we found makes no sense." She pressed a button, and pictures appeared in the air above them. The assembly saw human cities, but they were empty. Streets with no people, houses with doors open, cars stopped in the middle of roads. "Look closer," Dr. Yithara said. The pictures zoomed in. On tables, meals sat half-eaten. In parks, children's toys were scattered on the ground as if kids had just been playing. In offices, computers were still running with work half-finished on the screens. "There are no signs of fighting," Dr. Yithara continued. "No damage. No bodies. Nothing was stolen. It looks like every human just stopped what they were doing and walked away." The Korath representative, a big being covered in thick armor, growled. "Maybe they were attacked by enemies we do not know about?" "We checked for that," Dr. Yithara said. "No strange ships, no unknown weapons, no signs of any attack at all." The hall grew very quiet. This was scary in a way that battles and wars were not. At least in wars, you knew what happened. This was a mystery that made no sense. Zix, the trader, made worried clicking sounds. "But humans owe us money for trades. They have contracts to finish. They cannot just leave." "Apparently they can," Kethvar said sadly. The crystal being spoke again, its voice like music. "Perhaps this is another of their strange experiments. Humans do unusual things for reasons they call science or art." That was also true. Humans did weird things that other species found hard to understand. They made paintings that served no useful purpose. They climbed mountains just to see the view from the top. They wrote stories about things that never happened and called it entertainment. "Maybe," Dr. Yithara said, "but this is different. I found something else." More pictures appeared. These showed humans walking through their cities, but they looked strange. They moved slowly, like people walking in a dream. Their faces were calm, but their eyes looked far away, like they could see something others could not. "Security cameras caught them in the last days before they disappeared," Dr. Yithara explained. "They were not running or hiding. They were walking toward spaceports and the edges of their cities. All of them, at the same time, like they heard a call we could not hear. The assembly members looked at each other with worry. Species had vanished before, but always because of war or sickness or natural disasters. Never like this. Never by choice. The ethereal network representative, a being made of light and thought, flickered brighter. We detect no mental interference, no mind control, no drugs or diseases that affect thinking. Their choice appears to be real. Kethvar felt a chill run through his body. Real choice made this even scarier. If humans were forced to leave, the assembly could find the enemy and fight back. But if humans chose to go, we must find them, he said. They are part of our assembly. They are our friends. Are they? Asked the Korath representative. Humans are strange. They never fit in properly. Maybe the galaxy is better without their chaos. Many beings nodded. It was true that humans caused problems. They asked questions that made others uncomfortable. They suggested changes when everything was working fine. They never followed rules the way they were supposed to. But Kethvar remembered how humans solved problems in ways no one else thought of. When the traders and the Korath almost went to war over mining rights, it was human ambassador Chen who suggested they share the profits and work together. When the crystal beings could not understand why the hive workers were unhappy, humans explained feelings in a way that finally made sense. We will search for them, Kethvar announced. I will not let the assembly lose any member without a fight. As the meeting ended, beings left to return to their homes. But Kethvar stayed behind, looking at the empty human chair. Something felt wrong about the galaxy without humans in it. It felt too orderly, too quiet, too safe. For the first time in his long life, Kethvar wondered if safe was good. Humans never felt safe, and maybe that was why they always kept growing and changing and surprising everyone. He made a decision that would change everything. The assembly would find the humans, no matter where they had gone or why they had left. The galaxy needed them, even if no one understood why yet. Outside the Great Hall, space felt empty in a way it never had before. Somewhere out there, 7 billion humans had vanished without a trace. The question was not just where they had gone. The question was what the galaxy would become without them. 8 months had passed since the humans disappeared. At first, the galaxy seemed to run just fine without them. Maybe even better, some species said. Trade routes were more organized. Meetings finished faster. Everything felt neat and tidy. But Dr. Ythara noticed the small things first. She sat in her laboratory on the research station, looking at reports from across the galaxy. Her 6 arms moved quickly as she sorted through data that made no sense. Something was wrong, but it was hard to explain. The crystal hegemony had just finished their greatest invention ever. A machine that could turn thoughts into solid objects. Their scientists were very proud, but when Dr. Ythara asked them what they planned to do with it, they could not answer. We will use it efficiently, was all they said. The Hive Collective had been expanding to new worlds for 1,000 years. They were very good at it. They would arrive on a planet, build their cities in perfect patterns, and make everything work smoothly. But for the past few months, they had stopped expanding. When asked why, they said they were still thinking about it. But Dr. Ythara knew they never had to think before. They just knew what to do. Even the Korath, who loved fighting more than anything, were acting strange. Their battles had become boring. They followed the same attack plans their ancestors used. No surprises, no new ideas, just the same old fights over and over. Dr. Ythara called Ambassador Kethvar. His face appeared on her screen, looking tired. I need to show you something, she said. Can you come to my lab? When Kethvar arrived, Dr. Ythara had papers and charts spread everywhere. She looked like she had not slept in days. Look at these reports, she said, pointing to different charts. Production is down in every sector. Scientific breakthroughs have almost stopped. Even simple innovations have slowed to nearly zero. Kethvar picked up one of the reports. It was from the Merchant Guild, the traders who moved goods between worlds. It says here that they are having trouble finding new trade routes. So what? They have thousands of routes already. Exactly, Dr. Yathara said, her eyes bright with worry. They have good routes, but they used to always look for better ones, new paths, shorter cuts, more efficient ways to move cargo. Now they just use what they have. She pulled up another chart. The Ethereal Network used to solve 3 major scientific problems every month. Last month, they solved 0. When I asked them why, they said all the easy problems were already solved. Maybe that is true, Kethvar said slowly. No! Dr. Yathara waved 2 of her arms excitedly. Look at this old data. 50 years ago, the Ethereal said the same thing, but then humans suggested they try looking at problems differently. Humans asked, what-if questions that seemed stupid, and suddenly the Ethereals found dozens of new things to discover. Kethvar felt a cold feeling in his stomach. What are you saying? Dr. Yathara sat down heavily. I think humans were not just members of our community. I think they were necessary for it to work. She turned on a big screen that showed the whole galaxy. Red dots marked places where problems were happening. Look, she said, the crystal beings make perfect machines, but they cannot think of new ways to use them. The hive builds perfect cities, but they cannot imagine better ones. The Korath fight perfect battles, but they are the same battles their great-grandparents fought. The red dots seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. So many problems that had never existed before. Every species has become very good at doing what they already do, Dr. Yathara continued. But none of us can think of new things to do anymore. None of us can change or grow or surprise ourselves. Kethvar stared at the screen. But we are logical beings. We should be able to solve our own problems. That is just it, Dr. Yathara said sadly. We are too logical. We think in straight lines. We follow patterns. We do what makes sense based on what we already know. She brought up an old video. It showed a human scientist named Dr. James talking to a group of crystal researchers. The crystals had been stuck on a problem for months. Dr. James listened to them explain their very logical approach. Then he asked, but what if you tried doing it backwards? The crystals had thought this was a stupid idea. Why would anyone work backwards? But they tried it anyway, just to humor the human. It worked better than anything they had tried before. Humans asked the questions we never thought to ask, Dr. Yathara said. They suggested things that seemed wrong or silly or impossible. And somehow, those suggestions helped us break through when we were stuck. Kethvar remembered many meetings where humans had done exactly that. When serious problems seemed to have no solutions, humans would say something that sounded crazy. Everyone would laugh or argue. But later, someone would think about the crazy idea and find a way to make it work. You think we depended on them? Kethvar said. It was not a question. I think we still depend on them, Dr. Yathara replied. And without them, we are becoming like machines that only know how to repeat what they did yesterday. Just then, Kethvar's communication device made a sound. An urgent message from the assembly. He opened it and read quickly. His face went pale. What is it? Dr. Yathara asked. The Korath and the Trader Guild are about to go to war, he said. A trade dispute that should have been easy to solve. But no one can think of a solution that both sides like. Dr. Yathara nodded sadly. Let me guess. Both sides have very logical reasons for their positions. Both sides are completely right according to their own rules, and there is no way to compromise without someone losing. Yes, Kethvar said. How did you know? Because that is what happens when only logical beings try to solve problems, she said. Logic is good for many things, but sometimes problems need illogical solutions, creative solutions, solutions that break the rules and make something new. She stood up and began pacing with all 6 arms moving. Humans were our chaos, our randomness, our source of the unexpected. When we got stuck in our logical patterns, they threw us off track in ways that helped us find new paths. Kethvar felt like he was seeing the galaxy clearly for the first time. All those years, he had thought humans were just strange and difficult. He had never realized they were necessary. "We have to find them," he said. "Yes," Dr. Yathera agreed. "But I think we need to find them soon. Because looking at these reports, I think our whole civilization is starting to die. Not from war or disaster, but from becoming too perfect to grow anymore." Outside the laboratory, space looked the same as always. But now Kethvar could feel the difference. Everything was too quiet, too orderly, too predictable. The galaxy was running like a perfect machine, and that, he realized, might be the most dangerous thing of all. 2 years had passed since the humans vanished. The problems Dr. Yathera had warned about were no longer small. They were everywhere. Captain Vortash of the Merchant Guild stood on the bridge of his cargo ship, staring at the navigation display. The same trade route he had used for 20 years was broken. A small asteroid field had appeared in the path. Nothing dangerous, just inconvenient. Before, this would have been easy to fix. Someone would have found a new way around it. Now, Vortash could not think of what to do. His computer suggested 17 different solutions, all perfectly logical. But something felt wrong about each one. He needed a solution that was not in the computer. He needed someone to suggest something unexpected. He needed a human. But there were no humans left to ask. Across the galaxy, the same problem was happening everywhere. The careful systems that had worked for centuries were breaking down in small ways. And without humans to suggest the strange solutions that somehow worked, no one knew how to fix them. On the crystal homeworld, Master Scientist Klatar sat in her laboratory surrounded by the most advanced equipment in the galaxy. Her people had always been proud of their logical minds and perfect research methods. They could solve any problem by thinking about it carefully and following proper procedures. But for the past year, their research had produced nothing new. They had perfected everything they could think of, but they could not think of anything else to perfect. It was like being trapped in a room with no doors. Klatar remembered the human scientist who used to visit their world. Dr. Sarah Kim had asked questions that seemed pointless. "What if you tried to make something worse instead of better?" she had once suggested. "What if you started with the wrong answer and worked backwards?" The crystal scientists had thought these ideas were silly. But when they tried them, just for fun, they discovered things they never would have found using logical methods. Now Dr. Sarah Kim was gone with all the other humans, and the crystal scientists could not remember how to think the wrong way on purpose. In the Hive Collective's central planning chamber, millions of worker beings moved in perfect coordination. They had built the most efficient civilization in the galaxy. Every action served a purpose. Every resource was used perfectly. Every decision was made for the good of all. But Queen Mother Ithyan felt something was wrong. Her people had stopped growing. Not in numbers. They still had plenty of workers. They had stopped growing in new ways. For the first time in their species' history, they could not imagine what to build next. The humans had once suggested that the hive try building something beautiful instead of just useful. "Make art," a human ambassador had said. "Make something that serves no purpose except to make people happy." The hive had built a crystal garden in the center of their capital city. It served no function, but somehow it made everything else work better. The workers seemed happier. Their efficiency actually improved when they could see something beautiful. Now they wanted to build more beautiful things, but they could not think of what beauty meant without humans to explain it. Ambassador Kethvar called an emergency meeting of the Galactic Assembly. When the representatives gathered, the Great Hall felt empty even though every species was present. The absence of humans made everything echo strangely. "Friends," Kethvar began, "our civilization is in crisis." The Korath representative, General Mordak, growled in agreement. "Our warriors have become weak. They fight the same battles their ancestors fought. There is no honor in predictable victory." "Our trade routes are failing," added Merchant Vortash. "We cannot adapt to small changes. Our systems are too rigid." Master Scientist Klatar spoke next. "Our research has stopped advancing. We can perfect what we know, but we cannot discover what we do not know." Even the ethereal network, beings of pure thought who rarely showed emotion, flickered with distress. "We have reached the limits of logical reasoning. We can process infinite information, but we cannot imagine new questions to ask." Dr. Yathara stood up slowly. She looked older than before, tired from months of studying the crisis. "I have been researching our history," she said, "looking at records from thousands of years ago. I found something that explains what is happening to us." She activated a hologram that showed the galaxy's history in fast motion. Civilizations rose and fell like waves on a beach. "Every few thousand years, the galaxy goes through the same cycle," she explained. "Civilizations become very advanced and efficient. They perfect their societies. Everything works smoothly." The hologram showed peaceful, orderly worlds with perfect cities and happy populations. But then they stop changing. They stop growing. They become so good at being what they are that they forget how to become something new. And slowly, they die out. Not from war or disaster, but from being too perfect. The assembly members watched in silence as the hologram showed civilization after civilization fading away, not in fire and destruction, but in quiet stagnation. "But some civilizations survived," Dr. Yathara continued. "The ones that had what the ancient records call chaos bringers, species that refused to follow rules, beings that asked impossible questions and suggested ridiculous solutions." The hologram showed small groups within each civilization, different from the others, causing disruption and forcing change. "Every stable galaxy needs an unstable element," Dr. Yathara said. "Every perfect system needs something imperfect to keep it alive and growing. For our galaxy, that element was humanity." General Mordak slammed his armored fist on his chair. "Then we must find them. The galaxy cannot survive without chaos." "We have been searching," Kethvar said sadly. "Our best scouts have followed their trail to the edge of known space, but the trail goes into regions that our sensors cannot map, places where physics works differently, places our ships cannot go." Dr. Yathara activated another display. This one showed the edge of the galaxy, where stars became sparse and space itself seemed to bend in impossible ways. "The humans' last known position was here," she said, pointing to a region marked with warning symbols. "This is the boundary zone. Space is unstable there. Time moves strangely. Most ships that enter are never seen again. But some ships have returned," she continued, "and their reports are confusing. They speak of structures that exist in multiple dimensions, technology that responds to thoughts instead of commands, energy that feels alive." The assembly hall grew very quiet. What Dr. Yathara was describing sounded impossible, even frightening. "I believe the humans did not just leave our galaxy," she said. "I think they evolved beyond it, beyond physical form, beyond the rules that limit the rest of us." Merchant Vortash made a worried sound. "If that is true, then they cannot come back to help us." "Maybe," Dr. Yathara said. "Or maybe we need to follow them." The suggestion hung in the air like a dangerous idea. Follow humanity to the edge of existence itself? Leave behind everything they knew and understood? Risk everything for the chance to keep growing? It was exactly the kind of crazy, impossible suggestion that a human might have made. and for the first time in 2 years, the galaxy faced a choice that could not be solved by logic alone. Outside the assembly hall, space stretched toward the distant edge where the humans had vanished. Somewhere out there, beyond the boundary of the known universe, 7 billion humans had found a way to keep growing and changing. The question now was whether the rest of the galaxy had the courage to follow them into the impossible. 5 years had passed since the humans disappeared. The galaxy was dying, not in fire and war, but in silence and stillness. The great civilizations that had ruled space for millions of years were fading like old stars running out of fuel. They still existed, but they had forgotten how to live. Captain Kethvar stood on the bridge of the exploration ship, Last Hope. At his side were the best representatives from every species: Dr. Yethara with her 6 arms and brilliant mind, General Mordak of the Korath with his warrior's courage, Master Scientist Klatar from the Crystal Hegemony, and others who had volunteered for what might be a one-way journey. They were heading to the boundary zone, the edge of known space where the humans had last been seen. It had taken 5 years to build a ship that might survive the journey. Even so, they were not sure it would be enough. "Captain!" called the navigation officer, a young ethereal whose light flickered nervously. "We are approaching the boundary. All sensors are showing impossible readings." Through the main viewer, space looked wrong. Stars twisted in spirals that hurt to look at. Colors existed that had no names. The very fabric of reality seemed to bend and flow like liquid. "This is madness," General Mordak growled, but his voice held wonder as well as fear. How did humans survive in such a place? Dr. Yethara was studying her instruments with fascination. The rules of physics are different here. Matter and energy behave in ways our science cannot explain. It is as if this region exists in multiple dimensions at once. As they moved deeper into the boundary zone, strange things began happening. The ship's computer started giving answers to questions no one had asked. The lights changed color based on what the crew was thinking. Even the air seemed alive with possibility. "Captain," the sensor operator called out, "I am detecting structures ahead. But they are unusual." On the screen appeared something that challenged every idea they had about what buildings should look like. The structures seemed to exist in several places at once, shifting between solid and transparent, growing and shrinking as they watched. "They are beautiful," whispered Klatar, her crystal form ringing with amazement. "They serve no logical purpose, yet they feel perfectly right." As they approached, the structures responded to their presence. Lights began pulsing in welcome patterns. Pathways opened where none had existed before. It was as if the buildings were alive and happy to see them. "Life signs," announced Dr. Yethara, checking her readings, "but they are unlike anything in our databases. The energy patterns suggest consciousness, but not in any form we understand." A gentle voice suddenly filled their ship. It spoke in all their languages at once, yet somehow they each heard it clearly in their own tongue. "Welcome, friends from the old galaxy. We have been expecting you." The crew looked at each other in amazement. The voice was familiar yet changed, warm and kind, but with depths they could not fathom. "We know that voice," Kethvar said slowly. "It is Ambassador Sarah Chen. But how is that possible?" Light began forming on their bridge, swirling into the shape of a human woman, but she was not quite solid, and her eyes held starlight. "Hello, Kethvar," the being said with Sarah's smile. "It is good to see you again, old friend." "Sarah?" Dr. Yethara stepped forward with her instruments. "But you are different. What happened to you? What happened to all humans?" The Sarah being flickered with something like sadness. "We evolved. We reached the point where our physical forms could no longer contain what we were becoming. So we chose to transcend them." General Mordak gripped his weapon, though he did not draw it. "Transcend?" What does that mean? We became what we were always meant to be, Sarah explained. Pure consciousness. Unbound by the limits of flesh and bone, we can exist in multiple dimensions, experience time differently, shape reality with thought alone. She gestured, and suddenly the crew could see the galaxy as the humans now saw it. Layer upon layer of existence, dimensions beyond counting, possibilities stretching forever in all directions. But why did you leave us? Kethvar asked, pain clear in his voice. We needed you. Sarah's form flickered with regret. Because staying would have hurt you more than leaving. We were becoming something your universe could not contain. Our very presence was starting to warp reality around us in dangerous ways. Dr. Yithara was recording everything, her mind racing. You said this has happened before, other species like you. Many times, Sarah confirmed. Across millions of years, consciousness evolves beyond physical form. It is the next step in the journey of intelligent life. But it must be chosen freely, and it cannot be undone. Master Scientist Klatar spoke up, her crystal voice ringing with curiosity. What about us? Our civilizations are failing without your chaos to guide us. Sarah nodded sadly. We know. We can see it happening. This is why we chose to wait here, at the boundary between what is and what could be. We hoped some of you would be brave enough to follow. Follow you where? General Mordak demanded. Into the next stage of existence, Sarah said. But the choice must be yours. We cannot force evolution upon anyone. It must be chosen willingly, with full understanding of what you would lose and what you might gain. The being that had once been Sarah Chen gestured again, and suddenly they could see their home galaxy from a cosmic perspective. The great civilizations looked small and fragile, like flowers blooming in an endless garden. Beautiful, but temporary. Every species eventually faces this choice, she explained. Remain as you are and eventually fade away when your physical forms reach their limits. Or risk everything to become something greater. What would we have to give up? Dr. Yithara asked. Everything you think you are, Sarah replied honestly. Your bodies, your familiar ways of thinking, your comfortable certainties. You would have to abandon every assumption about reality and consciousness. It would mean becoming something entirely new. The crew fell silent, struggling with the magnitude of what they were being offered. To become like the humans meant leaving behind not just their physical forms, but their entire way of existing. Most species choose to remain as they are, Sarah continued. They value what they know over what they might become. And that is not wrong. There is beauty in the choice to stay and live fully within the bounds of physical existence. But if we stay, Kethvar said slowly, our civilizations will continue to stagnate and die. Eventually, yes, Sarah admitted. Without the chaos of growth and change, perfection becomes a kind of death. You have optimized yourselves so well that you have lost the ability to become something other than what you are. General Mordak laughed, a sound with no humor in it. So our choices are to die slowly as we are, or risk everything on becoming something we cannot understand? Yes, Sarah said simply. That is always the choice consciousness faces when it reaches the edge of its current form. Will you leap into the unknown or hold tight to the familiar until it fades away? Outside their ship, the impossible structures pulsed with patient light. Somewhere in those shifting forms, 7 billion humans waited in their new existence, having already made their choice to transcend everything they had once been. Now the representatives of the galaxy's species faced the same decision. In the silence of the bridge, each being contemplated what it would mean to abandon everything they knew for the possibility of becoming something greater. The humans had shown them the edge of existence itself. The question now was whether any of them had the courage to step over it. 7 years had passed since humanity vanished. Now, at the edge of everything they knew, the representatives of the galaxy faced the biggest choice in the history of consciousness itself. Ambassador Kethvar looked around the bridge at his companions. Each face showed the same mixture of fear and wonder. They had come so far from their safe, logical worlds. Now they stood at a threshold that would change everything. The being who had once been Ambassador Sarah Chen waited patiently. Around their ship, the impossible structures pulsed with gentle light, as if breathing. Somewhere in those shifting forms, 7 billion humans existed in their new state of being. "I need to understand," Dr. Yithara said, her 6 arms moving nervously. "If we choose to transcend like you did, what happens to our people back home?" Sarah's luminous form flickered with compassion. "That is for them to decide. We can show them the same choice we are showing you. But evolution cannot be forced. It must be chosen freely by each individual, each species, each civilization." General Mordak stepped forward, his warrior's instincts making him protective. "And if they choose to stay as they are? Then they will live as they choose to live," Sarah replied. "There is no shame in that choice. Many species across the cosmos have chosen to remain in physical form. They live, they love, they create beautiful things within their limits. Their lives have meaning, but they still die," Master Scientist Klatar said quietly. "Eventually, their civilizations fade." "All things end," Sarah agreed. "The question is whether they end in stagnation or transformation, whether consciousness chooses to explore its limits or transcend them." Kethvar felt the weight of the moment. Back home, entire civilizations waited for their decision. The crystal hegemony, trapped in their perfect logic. The Hive Collective, unable to imagine new forms of beauty. The Korath, fighting the same battles endlessly. The ethereal network, processing infinite information but unable to dream of new questions. "Show us," he said suddenly. "Show us what transcendence really means." Sarah nodded and extended her hand toward him. "This will not change you permanently, but it will let you experience what we have become, just for a moment." Kethvar reached out and touched the being's luminous fingers. Immediately, his consciousness exploded beyond his body. He could see the universe from impossible angles. Time flowed in all directions at once. He experienced the birth and death of stars as moments of beauty. He felt the connections between all living things, the web of consciousness that linked every thinking being across the cosmos. Most amazingly, he could feel the potential for growth that stretched infinitely in all directions. No limit, no end, just endless possibility for becoming more than what he was. The vision faded, and he was back on his ship, gasping. Around him, his companions stared with worried faces. "What did you see?" Dr. Yithara asked urgently. "Everything," Kethvar whispered. "I saw everything that could be. It was—" He struggled for words. It was like being a child who suddenly learned there were infinite rooms in a house he thought had only one. Sarah smiled sadly. "Now you understand why we could not stay in our old forms. Once you glimpse the vastness of what consciousness can become, physical existence feels like a cage." But even as he spoke, Kethvar felt the memory of the vision fading. His normal mind could not hold such vastness. He was already forgetting the feeling of infinite possibility. "The others should experience this too," he said. One by one, each representative touched Sarah's hand and experienced the transcendent vision. Each returned with expressions of awe and loss, having briefly tasted something beyond their ability to fully understand or remember. "This is our gift to you," Sarah said when they had all experienced the vision. "The knowledge that transcendence is possible. The choice is now yours to make." Dr. Yithara was the first to speak. "I want to go back and tell my people what we have learned. They should know there is a choice. General Mordak nodded slowly. My people are warriors. We should not run from the greatest battle of all, the battle to become more than we are. But we cannot make the choice for others, Klatar added. Each being, each species must decide for themselves. Sarah's form brightened with approval. You understand. This is why we chose to wait here, at the boundary. We hoped that someday representatives would come who could carry this choice back to the galaxy. What about you? Kethvar asked. Will you return with us? Sarah shook her head. We cannot. We have changed too much. Our presence in your reality would be disruptive. But we will wait here for those who choose to transcend. And we will watch over those who choose to remain. Watch over them how? Dr. Yathara asked. The galaxy needs chaos to survive, Sarah explained. If no species chooses transcendence, we will find other ways to introduce the randomness necessary for growth. Perhaps we will inspire new questions in young minds. Maybe we will cause happy accidents that lead to discoveries. The galaxy will not be allowed to die in stagnation. Kethvar felt a warmth in his chest. Even in their transcended state, humans were still trying to help the galaxy grow and change. We should return, he said finally. Our people need to know they have a choice. The journey home took weeks, but it felt like years. Each representative spent the time thinking about what they had seen and experienced. The galaxy looked different now, not smaller but more precious. It was beautiful in its limitations, meaningful in its struggles. When they finally reached the assembly, representatives from every species gathered to hear their report. The great hall was packed with beings eager to learn what the expedition had discovered. Kethvar stood before them all and told the story simply. The humans had evolved beyond physical form. They offered the same choice to any who wished it, but those who chose to remain would also be honored and protected. The debate that followed lasted for months. Some species, like the ethereal network, were immediately interested in transcendence. Others, like the crystal hegemony, wanted to study the possibility carefully. The Korath argued among themselves, some seeing transcendence as the ultimate battle, others preferring to fight within known limits. But the most important change was that the galaxy was talking about growth again, about becoming something new. The stagnation that had been killing their civilizations slowly began to lift. Some species eventually chose transcendence, making the journey to the boundary zone to join the evolved humans. Others decided to remain as they were, but with new inspiration to keep changing and growing within their physical forms. Most importantly, the galaxy learned that there was no single right choice. Some consciousness was meant to transcend all limitations. Other consciousness found meaning in exploring the infinite possibilities within limitations. Years later, Ambassador Kethvar would often stand at his office window, looking out at the stars. Sometimes he wondered if he had made the right choice to return, but then he would see a young being asking an impossible question, or hear about a new discovery made by thinking in unexpected ways, and he would smile. The humans were gone, but they had left the greatest gift possible, the knowledge that growth never had to end, whether in physical form or transcended consciousness. Intelligent beings could always choose to become more than they were. In the boundary zone, structures of impossible beauty pulsed with patient light. Humans and other transcended species waited there, ready to welcome any who chose their path. But they also watched over the physical galaxy, making sure it never stopped changing, never stopped growing, never stopped asking the questions that had no easy answers. The galaxy had learned the most human lesson of all. The only real failure was the failure to keep becoming something more.